And thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. I am sorry for the delay. I'm still getting the hang of all the technical factors with all of this, but so far so good. I'm getting there. It's good to see you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. We were talking about what is really the biggest story today, right now. And one of the ones that struck me, of course, this morning, and I thought maybe might drive some folks on the left sort of nuts, was the whole Nobel Peace Prize thing. Right? I mean, how about that? The president getting nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. I have no doubt that that probably is sort of getting under the skin of some people, shall we say. Hey, maybe even President Obama doesn't appreciate it. Nonetheless, you know what he accomplished there between the UAE and Israel is a really big deal. And, you know, I was amazed. The media really didn't give it much coverage, right, on the day that they announced this. But it is a really substantive thing, and I think speaks to the progress that can be made and should be made. And yes, he should get some credit for it, but we'll see. I mean, he's been nominated. I imagine that there are some powers that be that do not want to see him get it. But, you know, he'd be in some interesting company, right? President Obama got one. Woodrow Wilson got one. Theodore Roosevelt got one. Jimmy Carter got one. Hey, maybe President Trump could get one. It's good to have you all here. I hope that you've had a chance to check out my podcast. I'm really excited about it. And I get up bright and early just for you guys every single morning to make sure that it happens. And we talk all about the news of the day. You can download it every morning, subscribe. You can get it on Apple iTunes. You can get it on Spotify. You can get it on iHeartRadio. And you can get it, of course, on none other than TrishIntel.com. That is my brand new site, TrishIntel.com, where we have all the news you need. And I hope you're going there because there's a lot to talk about that's substantive right now. You know, all this noise that you hear from, you know, frankly, some mainstream media organizations, you've heard me talk about that in the past. They're not really focusing on the substantive stuff. And there's some pretty substantive stuff happening right now when you think about our economy and the jobs that we're adding. That's some pretty good news, by the way, 1.4 million jobs the other day. I was delighted when I saw that. You know, the Fed had predicted that we would see an unemployment rate like that, like at the year end. And what do you know? Here we are, 8.4% right now. So some very, very good news on the economic front. It shows you, right, that if you can just get out of the way, then Americans, we know what to do. Right? We know how to get out there and to make money. Cher Bear says there was no coverage by the mainstream media in terms of the Nobel Peace Prize, for sure. Greetings from China. Wow, somebody joining us right now from China. That's pretty exciting. China has been very much on all of our radar right now, given the trade agreement. And our viewers from China may not like this, but I'm very hesitant about any agreements with the CCP right now because I feel that we can fully trust them. And to me, if you're going to trade with someone, right, you need to be able to trust them. It's that basic. You need to be able to know that if you're doing business with them, that they're going to follow through on their word. And I think that we've seen the Communist Party of China rather lacking, shall we say, on that front. And not only that, we're dealing with a situation right now where the Chinese are increasingly trying to buy more and more of America. We've got a great piece by my friend Neil Grossman. I call him our resident genius because the guy, let me tell you, he's an economist, he's a physicist, he's a mathematician, he's an investor, he's a former central banker, and he writes for TrishIntel.com. So he wrote a tremendous piece, everyone, on China and how their sovereign wealth fund is trying to buy businesses here in the US and what that actually means. There's some other interesting things going on. I'm curious what y'all think about the mask. Have you noticed the 180? I pointed this out recently, but it's come to my attention once again on Joe Biden and this mask thing, because this is a guy who is now suddenly saying he believes in the Constitution, even though he stood up on that stage, right, with Kamala Harris, and they talked about a national mask mandate. Even though he did an interview with a Pittsburgh local reporter in which he said he would look at an executive order for a mandated mask. Because, you know, when I'm hiking in the woods in New Hampshire, I need to wear a mask out there in the wilderness, the same as I would if I'm on a New York City subway. Now, apparently, he's realizing that that may not be constitutional. And indeed, Joe, it's not. It's not constitutional. And it would be nice if you realized that sooner rather than later, before you stood up there, right, at the DNC and announced the whole thing. He's now backing off in a new report today. He did an interview over the weekend saying, oh, maybe you can't do that. You think? By the way, he did go to law school, right? Syracuse Law School. I mean, I get it. He barely graduated. In fact, I was a little kid in New Hampshire back in 1987 when he was running for president. That's how long Joe Biden has been running for president. And he stood up there in Claremont, New Hampshire, and he got into some kind of exchange with someone. And he basically said, look, I think my IQ is better than yours. And I'm a smart guy because I went to law school and I graduated in the top half of my class. Except he didn't graduate anywhere near the top half of his class. In fact, Joe Biden was number 76, perhaps, out of 85 or so. Nothing to really brag about, but, nonetheless. A lot of you talking about Joe Biden right now. I got to say, what cracks me up is they could have put forward anyone, right? I mean, how bad is it right now that that's the best they could come up with? Somebody who, clearly has seen his prime and, this is not it. And that's the best they could do. It's really pretty alarming because I think that, politics is a pretty noble endeavor. And I admire anybody for being willing to do that and put themselves through that and their family through that. So my hat goes off to him in that respect. But nonetheless, I mean, the Democrats, why choose him? Really and truly. And why choose Kamala Harris? I mean, you got to try and think through the logic on this one. It strikes me that they've got somebody in both of them, by the way, who will go whatever way the wind blows. I mean, at first he tells us we got to have a mask mandate. And then he tells us, oh, maybe it's not constitutional. Yeah, right. It's not. And Kamala Harris, another example. I mean, somebody who was putting people behind bars left and right in San Francisco way back when. And now she's saying, oh, Black Lives Matter and we need to do more. It's like this 180. They're both always doing these 180s. And I think that it's troublesome, right? Because you want your politicians to believe in something. And, I'm sorry, I get that Trump is not everybody's cup of tea, but the guy really stands to stand for something. He seems to have some backbone there in terms of what his values are and what he believes in. And, they may not always gel with one side or the other. They may be kind of out of whack with wherever the party is at the moment, but he certainly stands for something. And he rarely changes that tune. I think we should talk about that article that was in the Atlantic, because that Atlantic piece that used a bunch of unnamed sources really is in part what's wrong with journalism today. I mean, can you imagine publishing a piece in a magazine that has been so admired in the past as The Atlantic and not bothering to actually source anyone? I mean, to me, you don't have a story, right? If you can't source someone, then it's no better than the National Enquirer. And frankly, I'm giving the National Enquirer, kind of a ding by even comparing them right now to The Atlantic, because I don't think they'd do that. I mean, it's just not appropriate. It's not right. If you're going to go forward with the story, then for goodness sakes, could you get someone on record? I mean, it matters, right? And I'll tell you a story that I mentioned in the podcast the other day, and you can download it. I encourage you all to do so. Please go to Apple iTunes or Spotify or iHeartRadio or my site, trishintel.com. It is free, so you can download it in all of these places. You can listen every day. But I talked about a story back in October 2019. I remember talking with the president right around the time that we were pulling troops out of Syria. Do you remember that? And it was kind of a big deal. And some of my military sources were like, this is not good. We shouldn't be pulling out. And so I called the president to ask him questions about this. And he got a little bit agitated. And he said to me, how would you like it if you had to go to Walter Reed and see those young men and women that have lost their limbs because they're over there fighting for something that, people are just going to keep fighting about and have been fighting about for hundreds of years and will continue to do so. How would you like that? He said, how would you like having to deliver the message to a parent that they have lost their child fighting for this? And what I remember about that conversation was really how seriously he took all this and really how he felt quite responsible for any of these kids that lost their lives or their limbs in a way that you don't typically see among politicians. I think a lot of people tend to think about members of the military and they've got, the big chessboard and you can move this group here and this group there and this is what it means. He takes it very personally in terms of the individual lives. I also remember interviewing him back in February of 2020 in New Hampshire. And he had to really make a run for it. It was a very quick interview and he did a quick appearance, not quick, but for him, relatively quick. Maybe it was an hour on stage. But the reason was because he wanted to go and see some military family members. And, I think that sort of gets lost in it, that there is some humanity there. And the reason why he's very reluctant, if you ask me, on the war front is because he takes it quite seriously. And you know what? Every politician should, right? Because these are individual lives and every single life matters. I always say I would so much rather fight these wars with sanctions, economic sanctions, with business, right? Because I'd rather lose dollars than lives any day of the week. And I think that is a philosophy, certainly, that the president has tried to embrace. So good to have you all here. Seth Barron, my good friend, always tuning in. Seth, thank you for that. Very good to see all of you. TCC saying Trump is the first modern president who cares this much. That's it's an interesting point. I think that there is a lot of care there. And that's what got lost, basically, in that story that The Atlantic ran with. And I think that's why the president took it so hard. We've heard from sources that he was really upset. I get it. I certainly would be too. It's not easy, right? Having yourself written about in a way that's false, believe me. And it doesn't matter whether you're Trish Regan or whether you're a YouTube subscriber right now or whether you're the president of the United States. Listen, that kind of stuff hurts and nobody deserves to have anything written about them when people aren't even willing to put their names to it. And we're not talking about, things that are hugely influential. We're talking about things that may have an influence on the race, but really aren't policy issues. We've got a lot of good stuff going on, though. I don't want to dwell entirely on the media and all the bad stuff there. We've got a lot of good stuff going on with our economy right now that gets me really excited. What I don't understand, though, is why we can't see these local governments do a better job at just getting out of the way. You look at the poor kids in California right now. There was an interesting piece. My friend John Taylor, who's at the Hoover Institution, had a very good piece on this today, talking about the socioeconomic problems that you're leaving for these groups, these communities that the left is always trying to allegedly help. And school is such a good example of that. Right now in California, you've got all these kids that are not going to school. Think about what they are losing out on. If you're wealthy enough, you can go to private school. If you're wealthy enough, you can maybe hire a tutor. We've seen that there's a lot of pods that have started up, pods where these families get together and the kids, all work with one teacher. Of course, because you know what? People will figure this out if they need to and if they have the resources to. But the kids that don't have the resources, they're the ones that are really losing out. And then on top of that, they're going to cancel Halloween in LA. How do you like that? I guess they just want to cancel everything. Why? I will ask, can't we have these elections? We are a smart group of people. We are the world's largest economy. Can't we figure out how to make sure that people can safely vote in person? How can we not, right? All you have to do is put up a bunch of tents. They could vote outside. You could put up some heaters. You could put up plexiglass that's opaque, right? That somebody came in and just Lysol down, industrial strength style, after each and every person voted. I find it very peculiar that all of a sudden, because of the threat of coronavirus, we can't figure this out. We can't figure out school. We can't figure out Halloween. And we can't figure out how to vote in September. It's very troubling. And then you think about what it might mean. And everybody needs to spend some time on this. I talk about how we're increasingly looking like a banana republic these days. I'm not kidding. I'm really not kidding. And do check out my piece. I wrote about this on Trish Intel because, listen, if we don't have a declared winner, right, but I think the deadline is sometime in December, we're going to possibly be looking at a constitutional crisis. And I'm going to tell you this, never in my life have I feared that. I always have taken so much pride in the fact that we've had this seamless transition. I get a little teary-eyed every election night when one side concedes. I mean, the closest thing we might have had to it was the hanging chads bit in Florida, but really, we haven't had anything quite like what they're trying to prepare us for right now, with the left actively coming out and saying, guess what? Trump's going to steal the election. I mean, what a crazy thing to say, right? I mean, talking about trying to sow doubt in voters' minds. Who the heck needs Vladimir Putin? Who needs Russia? When you have the Democrats, whether it be Joe Biden, who actually said in an interview with Trevor Noah, Donald Trump is going to try to steal the election, or whether it be Hillary Clinton, who goes on with none other than her former communications director, how planted is that one, to go on Showtime's The Circus and say Joe Biden should not concede no matter what. Meanwhile, we've got reports, there's one in Forbes, that Joe Biden has hired 600 lawyers. So this is going to turn into one massive billable hour festivity, right, for the lawyers. But you know who pays the price in all this? Us. America pays the price. You know, you've heard me talk about sort of the beauty that is this country, right? And part of that is this seamless transition of power. I remember learning in the 5th grade, way back in the 5th grade, that this was actually kind of a rare thing. And we should all be so thankful and so proud of it, because our founding fathers, they really anticipated a lot of these potential conflicts. And so we are not Latin America. We are not a banana republic. We are not some 2-bit emerging market country, right? We are the United States of America. So why don't we act like it? Why don't we? Because we're so darn broken with all these politics. It's good to see the anti-COINTELPRO show again. Welcome back. John G., Democratic projection of voting issues. Yes, that's exactly what this is. They are projecting what they think will work in their favor. And it really is pretty astonishing, because this is chatter that, honestly, I've never heard before in my entire life. I think you actually have to go back to the 1870s to really actually see this kind of conflict emerge. But, you know, it really shouldn't be emerging right now in 2020. We are that divided. We are that broken. But you know what? It threatens us on so many other levels. I mean, think about our position on the world stage. Do they not want to protect that in some way? Let me tell you, it matters that we are the world's reserve currency. The US dollar, right? Back in 1944 in New Hampshire at Bretton Woods, they created the IMF and they created the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. And there's a little bit of status that goes along with that. And it's important that we kind of be the big kid on the block, right? We're not acting like the big kid on the block right now. And you know what? That's not Donald Trump right now. That is the Democrats who are pushing this idea that Joe Biden should not concede, that somehow the election is going to be stolen, and that you cannot go and vote. Absolutely, positively cannot go and vote. You got to do it by a mail-in vote. We've already seen all this data that suggests mail-in voting can easily be corrupted. People don't have a lot of faith in that. You had 235,000 votes out in Nevada that were lost in June's primary. Then you think about some of the other studies that have come out where they've actually shown that on average, nearly 30 million votes went missing in the last few presidential elections. I mean, how are you going to have any confidence in the system if we don't have enough confidence in the ability to do these mail-in votes? It's so good, again, to have you all here. Someone's asking how the Irish dance lesson went. Mike Wiley, you know what? It was great. You know, the funny thing, everyone, is I just ran in here, ran back home. I have spent the afternoon in a sweltering hot Irish dance studio with my little 10-year-old girl who's turning into quite the little dancer, and she loves it, and she loves the Irish music. And it's a good way, I think, for her to connect with our heritage. You know, during coronavirus, she actually she started teaching herself Gaelic online. So she's really getting into the Irish thing, which is good because we got a lot of Irish folks in my family. Anyway, Mike, thank you for asking about that. I think about, as a mother even, how important it is for us to embrace the right set of principles for our future, right? We need to ensure that everybody has equal access and equal opportunity to the American dream. It's getting harder and harder out there. So somebody does need to put the policies of the United States first and foremost. Somebody needs to be thinking about our kids, and somebody needs to get all this identity politics out of the way, because the way you ensure opportunity is by looking at each and every community and being fair, right? It's not fair when you cancel kids' school, right? Because you're not providing them with the same set of opportunity that the other kids are going to get that go to private school. And yet the schools in California protest against vouchers. I mean, why not do everything you can for this next generation? And I think we all need to think about that in terms of ourselves and in terms of the next generation. That's what's so important. Again, really good to see you. Someone, Dallas is saying, we need you back on TV. You know what? I got to tell you, I kind of like this, and I'm going to tell you why. This is the first time in my career I've been able to go directly to you. And it's a really gratifying feeling. I mean, with the podcast, all the other podcasts, and we're doing great, by the way. That's all thanks to you guys. So keep subscribing, keep telling your friends about it. Tell them I'm back and I'm here, because we're up against these big institutions. We're coming out as one of the top podcasts for news in America. And you know what? Everybody else is produced by some big institution. And this is just little old me. Right. So I kind of like that. I like the ability to not have to deal with the institution and any biases that may be there within the institution. I get to go direct just to you. So it's simpler this way. I mean, granted, you don't have the big giant TV set and the fancy lights and the hair and makeup team and all that. So, and I just rushed in from Irish dance. So, it is what it is. But here's what matters. The information, truth, all right? Because not everybody always wants to tell the truth right now. They want to massage it this way and that. And I can assure you, the one thing you will always get from me is the truth. You may not even like it, right? And I've been known to call the president out when I need to call the president out. And I give credit where credit is due, because I just call balls and strike. I tell you like it is. And that's really important to me. So not having the institutional baggage is actually a really good thing. You can correspond direct with me here on YouTube, on trishintel.com. You can listen to the podcast every day. You can sign up for my emails where I tell you about all the news that I am watching. And it's kind of neat. We're able to do this right now because of the changing media landscape. I don't know as I really could have done this quite so easily 7 years ago, 8 years ago, even 5 years ago. It was challenging. People did it. And good for them. But you know what? I'm glad I'm here now with you. And we're together in this fight, because somebody has to be looking out for what's actual truth in this world. Our freedom depends on it. So thank you again, Casey. It's good to have you. I love all the pink hearts. Matches my dress. Marcus, welcome. Robert Hall, USA. I'm a Yankee straight shooter. Yes, I am I'm not fully a Yankee because I'm still, the Irish girl. But I did grow up in New England. And I'll tell you, I've told you guys this before, my live free or die roots are very, very strong. I mean, you can't not believe in freedom and liberty growing up in a state like that. I mean, it's on every single bumper sticker, not even license plate. So, when I could first learn to read, those were some of the first words that I read. And there's I think a restraint and a conservatism that is very intrinsic to the culture there. And, it's lately been changing a little bit with all the people from Massachusetts. not to go after Massachusetts. I know there's a lot of great Massachusetts folks out there, but it has changed a little bit and increasingly kind of gotten away from some of its core values. But the live free or die mantra is really an important one and something I believe in. And hey, right now in this environment, it really speaks volumes, right? Because what they have done is they have lost sight of us as individuals. We as individuals, we matter in all this, but the left doesn't think so. And that's the problem with all this. They want to tell us you got to wear a mask. They want to tell us you can't open your restaurant. New York City, by the way, Cuomo, finally getting around to opening the restaurants there inside. That's a big deal. Although he wants to put 4,000 cops on detail just to parole the restaurants and make sure that everybody's following the rules. I mean, 4,000 cops, they need 4,000 cops in the inner city, right? Helping to make sure that New York is a safe place, especially given the escalating murder rate, given the escalation in crime in general. But this is the fundamental problem. I really see it on the left right now, in that they do not respect us, right? The institutions are what matter. And there's no appreciation for the real individual. It's so good. Richard, thank you for joining. Jeffrey, my mother took one look at you and decided that you would be her favorite daughter if you were. Tell your mom I said thanks. I appreciate it. It's very heartening to hear from all of you. And I really like having this opportunity to go direct. Francisco, thank you so much. And you mentioned that one of the reasons I can go direct is because of social media. And that's very, very true. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Facebook. You can follow me on Parler. I just started there. Here on YouTube, please subscribe, of course, to the podcast. And let's keep these sessions going, because I think it's important right now. And like I said, the truth must be heard. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. I will see you, or at least you'll hear from me, tomorrow morning, bright and early. Make sure you're getting the Trish Intel podcast. Until then, have a great night.